again we will do a writing lesson together for the week 6. We will talk about classification essay. Now let's talk about what does it mean, classification. Classification means breaking down a general subject into several categories, meaning groups, according to one principle of selection. Means we take the subject and we divide the subject into different categories, different groups. We use classification, for example, when we are preparing a shopping list. Classification can mean division. Writing a classification essay means dividing members of a group. The members in a class must share similar characteristics. This is a really important point. When we are doing the classification, we need to have a principle. When classifying, you need a principle of classification. So here we are talking about the same thing. When doing the classification, we need a principle. So we won't be off topic and the categories share similar characteristics. For example, we have a really simple example of classification, a classification of a shopping list. We took the shopping list and we classified it into 3 major groups. The first group is dairy products, the second group is produce, the third group is canned goods. In the first group, we have milk, butter, cheese and cream. In the second group, we have onions, potatoes, oranges and bananas. And in the third group, we have tomato sauce, tuna and chicken broth. This is a very simple example, but still here we can see the principle in the classification. In the dairy products, they share one principle. And again, in the second group, they share the same principle. And in the third group, they have the same principle. And we can classify wallets as the material they are made of. For example, leather, plastic and cloth. Again, we have 3 major groups. And our principle is the material the wallets are being made. And we have another example, the classification of professors. We have serious, caring and indifferent. Again, the principle is the characteristics of the professors. Again, very important warning is do not mix principles. It's confusing to have overlapping bases for classification. If you are classifying the cell phones and you are dividing them into categories like big, large and expensive, it means that your principle is not straight. For example, if your principle is the size of the cell phones, you should stick to the size. For example, you should stick to the categories of small and large. If your principle is the cost of the cell phones, you should stick to the categories with expensive or cheap. It is really important to stay within the 3 categories that we are classifying. We have a little exercise here. We will find the out of place item. In the first exercise, we are classifying the cars as classical, economic, and sport. So here the out of place item is economic car. And the second transport, we have land, train, air, and water. The out of place item is train. For the rivers, we have dangerous, short, and wide. The out of place item is dangerous. For the drugs, we have uppers, illegal, and downers. So out of place item is illegal. At 5, we have colleges. We have private, famous, and public. Out of place item is famous. For the courses, we have year long, half term, and math. So out of place item is math. For the housing, we have rooms, cheap, and apartments, and the out of place item is cheap. Now let's talk about the types of classification. Two of the most common types of classification are by degree. It means from lower to higher, and by chronology means in time periods. To classify on the basis of degree means to judge value. For example, as good, better, and best. For example, if you are classifying the grades, A is the best grade, B is the better, and C is the good. You can also classify the subject on the basis of size. For example, small, medium, and large, as we did in the example of cars. Also, we can use time periods to do the classification. For example, we can divide history into 3 major categories, as ancient, Middle Ages, and modern. Again, for the time period, we can use 3 major categories as past, present, and future. Now, let's summarize what we talked about so far. So, a classification essay, it breaks down a general subject into different groups, different classes. Just like we did with the shopping list and the wallets, we can classify either things or ideas. The subject itself doesn't matter much. And we get to decide how we will classify our topic, but it is always a good idea to go from general to specific. So we can decide on how to classify our topic. For example, we can classify it as time periods, sizes, or value. But we should always go from general to specific. We should always follow an order. Now, let's talk about the outline. In the introduction part, first, we need to introduce the subject, the topic, in an interesting way. This is the opening. And after that, we should give a transition to our thesis statement. And at the end of our introduction, we need to give our thesis statement. Our thesis statement should be the classification of the subjects into 3 or 2 categories. You should always follow this order while doing the outline. For the classification essay, thesis statement is really easy because what you need to do is classify the subject into 2 or 3 categories, groups, classes, types. After the introduction, we have our body paragraph. In our body paragraph, first we need our topic sentence. In the topic sentence, we should present the first category, the first group, the first class. We should introduce it. And after that, we need to give the supporting details. You can define the category, you can give examples. And at the end, we should have our closing remarks. We should have our concluding sentence to wrap up this paragraph. This is for the first body paragraph. For the second body paragraph, in the first sentence, you should introduce the second category, the second class, the second group, the second type, and after that you should explain it, give details, and at the end you should give a closing remark. And for the third body paragraph, it follows the same order. In the beginning, you should present the last group, the last class, the last category. You should explain it, you should give details, examples, and at the end you should have your closing remark, concluding sentence. So after the body paragraphs, we need to have our conclusion paragraph. In the conclusion paragraph, in the beginning, we should talk about our major points. We should restate our thesis statement. And after that, we can state the importance of above classification. And at the end, we can give our opinion or we can give some enlightening remarks. Also, the conclusion is very easy because we just restate our thesis statement. We restate our major points and we give our closing remark. That's it. Now, let's talk about some useful vocabulary that we can use in classification essay. In our thesis statement, we can use classify as blah blah, and we can use classify into 3, categorize as, categories of something, divide as, divide into 3, types, kinds, sorts of something. You can choose one of these remarks and you can use it in your thesis statement. We have our keywords here: types, kinds, sorts, divide, classify, categorize. These are our keywords that we need to use in our classification essay. For the body paragraphs, we can use the first category, one type, the second category, secondly, another type, the last, third, final category, the other type, Again, these are really useful vocabulary that we should use in classification essay. These are the signal words that we should use. And in our concluding paragraph, for the thesis statement, restating the thesis statement, we can start with all in all, as a consequence, in conclusion, as a conclusion. And at the end of our concluding paragraph, while giving opinion, we can use I think, what I believe, in my opinion, from my point of view. These are the signal words that we should use in our classification essay. Signal words and useful vocabulary are really important. Please do not forget to use it while writing a classification essay. Now let's look at an sample classification essay. Our topic is the kinds of music, classification of music. I will give you some time to read it. So here, let's look at the last sentence. There is music that is relaxing, music that you are used to and listen to every day. And then there is also music that can be very annoying. So we immediately understand that in this essay, we will see three types of music. The first type is relaxing. The second type is the music that we listen to every day. And the third type is the annoying music. This was the introduction. Now, this is the first body paragraph. Again, I will give you some time to read. So in our first body paragraph, writer explains the first group, first type of music. It is the relaxing music. It starts with relaxing music. You can concentrate on your work. And then it explains this category. It explains this relaxing music type. It gives examples. For example, pop, Beethoven. And at the end of the paragraph, we have our closing remark. Everyone tries to be independent and they have their own taste of music and preference. Now, this is our second body paragraph. In our second body paragraph, writer explains the second type of music, the music that we listen to every day. It starts with explaining this category. Music that you listen to every day or music you choose to listen to as your personal favorites is your everyday music. And it gives us some examples. And again, at the end, we have the closing remark. Music that you also listen to every day can also be music that you constantly listen to on the radio. And we have our third body paragraph. Again, I will give you some time to read it. In the third body paragraph, the writer explains the last type of music. It starts with the most annoying music is the one that is constantly played on the radio. Music everyone is singing or just simply music that sucks. And then it gives us some examples. Like na 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 every day, playing on the radio every 5 minutes. And then at the end we have our closing remark. Have you noticed someone singing the same music you listen to on the radio every day? Some, if not most, songs can be very catchy. And after the body paragraphs, we have our conclusion paragraph. In our last paragraph, let's look at the last sentence. It is the restating of thesis statement. These are just some of the factors that divide the music into mentioned above 3 categories. And overall, it gives us the closing remarks. It gives us the major points of our essay. So overall, in the introduction paragraph, we should introduce our subject. And in our body paragraphs, we should introduce our categories one by one. And at the end, We can restate our major points and our thesis statement, and we can give our opinion. That was it for this writing lesson. Thank you so much for listening.